and welcome to this very special presentation. I'm joined today by none other than Dr. Colin Mendelsohn. Welcome.
Thank you, Pippa. Me or the audience?
Well, welcome everybody, really. And for those who don't know, hi, I'm Pippa Starr. Look, today the intention of this video is obviously to provide some information as clear and concise as we possibly can. You know, try and cut through the jargon, if you like, to help you guys understand what the law changes are, how they're going to affect you if you're a vapor in Australia from October 1. So we're going to try and address that and what that will mean to you. We want to try and cover things like who will it affect? What do nicotine users need to do? When will this be happening? And when should vapors take action to remain legal? Where could this be a problem in Australia? Does it affect the states? Does it just affect the territories or the whole of Australia? We'll try and address that as well. Why are the government and the TGA doing it? Well, we might try and touch on that as well. But look, I think without further ado, we just want to cut through the jargon and get into it and just try and help you get the best information as possible. So thank you once again for joining us, Colin, as we endeavour to get through this absolute shopping list of questions. I want to thank you to the public and those people who have helped me come up with some tremendous questions and very, very important ones to get the ball rolling. So starting with the questions that were submitted in from the public. Colin, have medical practitioners been educated around the positive outcomes of using vapes and NRT, like as NRT devices? Or is it being kind of swept under the carpet for more of the pharmaceutical options are going through, and are doctors going through training right now to learn about this stuff?
Well, the short answer is absolutely not. GPs know very little about vaping and they've had no formal training. And like the general public, they're actually very misinformed about nicotine and about vaping. They've been discouraged by the AMA, the government and various health and medical organisations for several years now, and generally they've developed fairly negative views. And like the public, they've been susceptible to all that scaremongering in the media, which has frightened everyone off. So it may be difficult to get a prescription. I think people need to be prepared for that. But if your doctor won't write one, you should get a second opinion. And there is a list of doctors online who are trained in smoking cessation, who understand vaping, who are willing to write prescriptions for nicotine if it's appropriate. And that list is at athra.org.au/doctors.
Fantastic. In fact, you did another fantastic blog, and all that information I will endeavour to have in the description below wherever you're watching this video. With any extra information links, I'll put as much helpful information moving forward there. Look, speaking of moving forward, let's move forward to the next question. How will nicotine strength or quantity be approached by doctors?
Well, the maximum strength that doctors can prescribe is 100 milligrams per mil, or 10%. And that applies to scripts for importing nicotine and also for nicotine being available from pharmacies.
Look, I don't want to get you to try and answer on behalf of all GPs. It's kind of obviously difficult to do that. But this is another general public question. Have GPs been educated as to the difference in quantity of nicotine purchased for DIY versus premix?
Not at all. No, they would have no idea what that means. So no, and I think the vapor visiting the GP will need to do some explaining about what they need, why they need it, and perhaps bring along some resources for the GP because they won't have any awareness of those sorts of details.
Right. So I'm guessing so far, if I go into a doctor and I say, I'm looking for some nicotine for my MTL style vape, they might look at me a little bit blankly at this stage.
Yes, I think you'd get a blank look. I think you need to assume the doctor knows very little and explain I guess, in as much detail as you need to help them to understand why you need what you want.
Sure. Will nicotine salt prescriptions only be given when the patient explains that they are in early stages of quitting smoking, or still require a high amount of nicotine in their vape, in other words? If somebody prefers to vape salts at sub-ohm levels, for instance, rather than a pod or a low wattage device, will this be entertained, or will they be dictated that freebase nicotine is their only suitability?
Look, again, I don't think the doctors will know what you're talking about. They don't know those terms, but it will be up to the GP to write the prescription and to prescribe either. And I think vapers just need to explain that to the GP. This is what they need to stop them from going back to smoking, and they've used it for a certain time and it's worked really well and they're feeling much better for it, and this is what they have to have.
Right. Sounds fair. So let's talk about pharmacists. Will pharmacists be stocking nicotine even though a lot of them are against it, it seems? Or will they be still ordering nic from overseas? Any clues on that?
Yeah, look, the Pharmacy Guild has always been opposed to vaping and nicotine liquid. But strangely, since it became available as a pharmacy line, they suddenly became interested. But a limited range of pharmacies will be selling nicotine, but I think very few. At this stage, they can either order it online from overseas or they can order it from a wholesaler in Australia. But they're not allowed to stock it on the shelves in the pharmacies. So if you go in with a script, they will work out what you need and probably order it from a wholesaler. The TGA is looking at that, and I think in the future they will be able to stock it on the shelves, but not at the moment. And the alternative, of course, is compounding. So some pharmacists will be able to make up the nicotine e-liquid from the basic ingredient, just like you do as a DIY vapor.
Yeah.
So they can make a customized nicotine liquid themselves from their own pharmacy.
Fantastic. If there's any compound pharmacists out there, I'll throw in a cheeky one. Give me a call. Got my contact details below. Anyway, in all seriousness, this is a serious video and there are serious things to address here, so we need to press on. And the next one's about the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, which is a benefit scheme which often helps reimburse the costs of some medicines in Australia. So let's touch on that. Is there any talk of nicotine prescriptions as well as the nicotine itself falling under the PBS and therefore subsidised for the consumer or similar? If so, what are the underlying out-of-pocket costs liable to be? If not subsidised, why not? Wellbutrin are readily dished out and subsidised by PBS for smoking cessation purposes, aren't they?
Yes, but there's no way nicotine liquid is going to be subsidised, at least in the short term. If a product does apply to the TGA, the manufacturer asks for approval and licensing and goes through that huge process, then the doctors can prescribe it and it may be then put on the PBS and get a subsidy. But if anything, I think these products will be more expensive because there's a whole administrative load for the pharmacists. Pharmacists put their markup on them, and I think we'll find they're more expensive. It's possible that some health funds may pay towards the cost of nicotine liquid. And I've contacted 3 health funds about that and I'm waiting for replies, but I get the impression they're going to be not doing that at this stage. But 1 or 2 may start doing it and possibly it'll flow on, but certainly not the PBS at this stage.
Keep us posted, keep following on the ATHRA website, I'm guessing. To keep up to date with that, the link will be below in the description. All right, more interesting questions. Thanks, guys, for all your questions. So helpful so far. Let's keep moving with them. Will a script be needed to... Let me start again. Will a script be needed only to import after the changes, or will it be needed if you have possession of nicotine from previously importing it prior to October 1?
Look, you actually need a prescription now. So currently, it's a criminal offence to possess or use nicotine liquid in Australia. It has been for some time, but it's not being enforced. But after the 1st of October, that may change and there may be greater enforcement. So people who have nicotine may be approached about that. And the penalties are quite substantial. So in 3 of the states and territories, you can theoretically go to jail for possessing nicotine. In the ACT, Northern Territory and Tasmania, you can go to jail for up to 2 years.
Wow.
And there are substantial fines. In Western Australia, it's now $30,000 for possessing nicotine. In the ACT, it's $32,000. It's $2,200 in New South Wales. Queensland, it's about $25,000. So these are potential fines and jail terms which aren't being enforced, but which are hanging over vapers and theoretically could be used. So currently they apply, and you do need a prescription to avoid that at the moment.
Right. Scary stuff.
Mm.
Better make sure we've got our prescription then, I think. Do you know if there are any plans to tax prescription liquid nicotine at this stage?
Look, not at this stage. We hope the government won't feel that it has to make up for the lost tax revenue from smoking by putting a tax on vaping. I mean, basically, vaping is a health treatment. It shouldn't have a GST like NRT. It should be taxed to some extent, but in proportion to risk. So the Royal College of Physicians, for example, says a 5% tax, 5% of the cost of tobacco, tax on tobacco would be appropriate. And I think a small tax would make it more attractive, because we found in some countries where they have increased taxes, vaping rates have reduced and smoking rates have increased. And it would be a bad move, I think, to put a significant tax on vaping for that reason.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be counterproductive. On to the next question. What about zero nicotine e-liquid? Will that be affected at all?
No, if you're using zero nicotine e-liquid, it's not affected by any of the regulations. You can buy it and use it in Australia as long as you're over 18, but these other regulations don't apply to that.
Right, and we can import zero nicotine e-liquid
Yeah,
without any dramas, yeah?
as well, but you may as well buy it in Australia from the vape shops.
Sure, yeah, support Australian by Australian. Australian have the best mixes, apparently. Apparently. Yeah, no, I think we do. Anyway, let's get on to the next one. Will they treat it as an option of last resort? So meaning like as in the doctors. Will like doctors treat this as an option of last resort, or try to force people to try, products like Champix first? Like, will this script allow you to order as much as you want, or only like a limited amount?
Look, in the UK, vaping is a first line option, so people can go straight to vaping and that's acceptable. In Australia, it is actually regarded as a second line option. So it's for people who haven't been able to quit with other methods. So if you've tried Champix or nicotine patches, then it's appropriate to consider vaping. I doubt very much the doctors will force people. If you've been a vapor and it's working, I doubt very much the doctors will say, well, you've got to try Champix or nicotine patches. Well, you've already quit smoking, so that would be silly. But the Australian guidelines do require people to say to the doctor, look, I have tried other things. And I think if you've said that, the doctor's happy with that, they should provide a script. The doctors generally are trained in all the other methods. So there's some risk they might say, well, this is how we treat smoking with the conventional treatments. We should really use those first. It'll be up to the doctor. As far as the quantities go, if you're importing nicotine, the doctor can give you a script for 3 months supply at a time. So you can bring in what you need for 3 months supply and on a script that will last 12 months. If you're buying nicotine from the pharmacy, the amount that's prescribed is up to the doctor. There's no limit on that. You could get a year's supply at once or a week's supply at once. That's up to the doctor.
Sort of half answers the next question. Will a doctor be permitted to write scripts indefinitely, or will there be like a cut-off point?
No, there's no limit on how long the doctor can write the scripts for. So if you keep going back to the doctor and say, look, I need the nicotine to stop going back to smoking, then it's quite appropriate for the doctor to prescribe that. Doctors will have different views on this. Some will say, well, nicotine's dangerous. You should try and get off it as soon as you can. I'm going to give you a script for 1 month and come back and see me, and then maybe I'll give you another month. That depends on the doctor.
Right.
So some doctors will be very risk averse. Others will be happy to give you a longer course. And doctors are also, there are also medico-legal issues here. If they give you a whole lot of nicotine and somehow it causes problems, then they're much more at risk, and they need to be seen to be supervising the vaping. If they just give you a script and you go away for 12 months and they don't see you, it could be argued that they haven't monitored the situation. So some will be concerned about that.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that. There's a really interesting question, I think. Who and how will the import of each individual's nicotine e-liquid be policed? Will our scripts be in some type of database? With whom?
Look, there will be, as far as I know, no database of nicotine prescriptions. They keep a database of PBS, pharmaceutical benefits prescriptions. So they know exactly what's happening there, but they don't normally keep records of non-PBS prescriptions. So, for example, you could order, and I'm not recommending you do, but if you get a script for 3 months supply and 4 repeats, you could order that every month if you wanted to. That would be an offence, but that they would not know that you're doing that, because each time it's looked at, they check it. If it's okay, they pass it through. So they don't know how often it's coming in. But there will be certainly more policing at the border by the border force. They'll be inspecting parcels, so they will be checking on each occasion, but they won't be keeping a record of what's been checked and what's been accepted.
Sure, and I think it's important to note at this stage, while this point comes up, that it's important to have a copy of your script from your chosen vendor with the goods, right?
Yep. Yeah. So when you order the script, order the medication or the liquid from your supplier, you should always upload or email the script so they can send the script back with your order, so that when the border force opens it, they can see the scripts there and they'll just let it through. If you don't, then theoretically that is an offence, and you could be, the products would be destroyed and you could be charged for that.
Yeah, wow, and that would be awful. We're looking at fines up to $220,000.
Yeah. So the fine for bringing in nicotine, trying to import nicotine, is up to $222,000.
Yeah.
Now, I looked at the TGA website about that today, and they go out of their way generally with their fines to say that, look, we're trying to educate people and advise them, and we don't want to fine people. And individuals will, of course, be fined less than in businesses that import these products. And if you're a repeat offender, you're more and more likely to get fined, and of course, more and more fines. So I think it's unlikely for a first offence that will be fine, and I doubt that individuals will get charged that sort of high level fine up to $222,000, but we don't know. So theoretically, there are huge fines that they could lay on individuals.
Yeah, so we've got to really make sure that when we do order, that we make sure the right things and processes are happening to a degree, yeah?
Yeah, and make sure the script is with the order, and also that you're not bringing in more than the script allows. So if your doctor says you can bring in 500 mils and you bring in a litre, that's an offence, and they would destroy that, and you theoretically are open to charges. So you've got to stick with the limit that's on the script.
Right. Another very interesting question, because I think this sort of falls out of just nicotine. Let me read it out to you, the great doctor. Will the use of various chemicals in e-liquid affect what can be supplied via prescription under these new rules? Like, for example, diacetyl, acetone, acetylpropanol, those type of benzaldehydes, those type of things. Is there any effect on those type of ingredients being
Yeah,
contained in the
so there
liquid?
are there are certain harmful ingredients which the new standards say shouldn't be in the liquids that we're using, and that's fair enough. If you're importing nicotine liquid, though, there's no checking on that. So that's up to the individual buyer to say to the manufacturer, yeah, are these chemicals in this product? Because I can't bring that to Australia, although there's no penalty for that. But it's not something we should be doing if we know these products are harmful. Pharmacies can't provide e-liquid with those chemicals. So if you're buying your chemicals from a pharmacy, they have to comply with the standards for avoiding those particular chemicals.
It's kind of an interesting question in this sense, and I'm throwing this one on the spot to you, Colin, is the fact that you could maybe bring in some zero nicotine e-liquid into Australia that may contain these chemicals. They may remain unchecked the way this is worked. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
but as soon as there's
yeah,
nicotine when you
yeah,
in the
yeah,
liquid, as soon as you bring it in, they become subject to
yeah,
these
yeah,
extra chemical components, as I rattled
yeah.
off before.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And these regulations only apply to nicotine e-liquids. So yes,
Right.
nicotine-free liquids are not regulated.
Okay. So there you go, ladies and gents. If that's what you like, look, obviously, yeah, we want to encourage, this, and I want to encourage personally, the safest outcomes possible and the safest way to stay off the stinkies for sure. All right, we've got the very last customer. Well, I guess at the end of the day, we're all the customers, aren't we? Public question: will vapers be subjected to state laws, penalties? You know, the ones we spoke about just before. I think it's up to 32,000 and jail
Yeah,
once they have obtained nicotine. So we've gone to all the effort to get them in, and
yeah,
under the federal law, it's
yeah,
okay. But what about the state laws?
yeah.
Can I then get pinged with by the state laws, although I try to do the right thing by the federal laws?
Yeah, so you've done all the right things. Under customs law, you've ticked all the boxes and bring your nicotine into Australia with your prescription. Once it gets to Australia, it's still an offence to possess or use nicotine liquid without a prescription. So if you don't have a prescription, if you've brought it in illegally, you are still at risk of those state and territory penalties. So the
Wow.
fines that we mentioned, potentially the jail time.
So you could go up to $220,000 importing without a
Mm,
prescription, and then
mm,
land it in your
mm.
state, depending where you live, could be up to $32,000 and some
Yeah,
jail time.
yes, potentially, yes.
Wow. Yeah,
Mm.
that's kind of horrendous. Well, look, I want to thank everybody who submitted some questions to me, and sorry if I did paraphrase some of them, but I think we certainly got the jargon-free type of answers and straight to the point, and thank you for that, Colin. Now I want to move into some of the questions that really pertain directly, and all the answers we are offering here today do pertain directly to the new TGA standards, and I will put a link to the guidelines for that below in the description. But I've asked them to, just to cut through the jargon a little bit. I've compiled a few quick and easy questions here for Colin to hopefully help us cut through that a little bit more. All right, are you ready? This is round 2. Not the quick fire round, okay? We want to make it nice and clear. All right, well, at least I do. Right, let's have a look at what will new laws mean for travellers coming into Australia?
Well, there's something called the traveller's exemption, which has actually been around for a while. And what that means is that visitors to Australia can bring in devices and nicotine e-liquid for their own personal use, up to 3 months of supply at a time, as long as they have a nicotine prescription. So if you're an overseas visitor, you will need to get a prescription from an Australian doctor before you come to Australia, or theoretically you are at risk of penalties because of illegal importation.
So they're not to get a prescription from their own country. Let's say I'm
No, no.
coming over from France or somewhere
Yep,
like that. I can't just go to my French doctor and say, "Can I have a
no.
prescription? I'm going to Australia." I must track down a doctor in Australia to get a prescription
Yeah.
before I can bring it in post-COVID
Yeah,
times, good times when we can fly back in.
Yeah, exactly. You go to the AFRA website and look at the list of doctors, and those people could then, after a discussion with the doctor, if it's appropriate, the doctor could write a nicotine prescription, and that would be legal. And that would cover them for 3 months' time, 3 months' supply, after which they need to then organise for more from within Australia.
Right. Interesting. All right, there you
Mm.
go. Watch out, travellers, if our fauna don't get you. Maybe our border force will. So be careful with that one. What fines or penalties will vapers be subjected to if they import nicotine without a prescription? And will they vary state to state? Well, we kind of covered that one, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
All right. So
yeah, just to clarify, importing nicotine without a prescription, the penalty is up to $220,000. And if you possess or use nicotine in Australia without a prescription, there are state penalties up to $32,000 and potential jail terms in 3 territories and states.
wow. Do vapers need to ensure the vendors have a copy of their prescription? That they attach a copy with their goods. I know I'm repeating it again, but these are really important points, I think.
Yeah, that's really important. That if you, from the 1st of October, when you order nicotine from an international vendor, you need to send them, upload on their website or email them the prescription. They will know that they have to send it back with the order, and it has to be in that order when it goes through the border, through the customs, and when the border force inspect it. So yes, they have to have a copy which they deliver with each order.
Sure, and also being careful when they purchase those liquids. Again, just to repeat, have to be careful what sort of chemicals are in if it is a nicotine containing a liquid by the sounds of things. So let's skip past there. And what about tamper proof? Like, will vapers need to ensure the products that are coming in with the nicotine products, of course, are like tamper proof?
No, there's no requirement for tamper-proof containers. That there is a requirement for child-resistant containers, though. So, I mean, and of course, nicotine should always be kept out of the reach of children and pets, and stored in child-resistant containers and preferably in locked cupboards. But there's no requirement for the containers to be tamper-proof, which means that if someone has opened it, there's some evidence that it's been tampered with.
Okay. So a lot of people import up to 200 milligrams of nicotine now. What is the maximum nicotine level again that people can import?
It's 100 milligrams per mil, yeah, for importing and for purchasing from Australian pharmacies. So the 200 milligram per mil is not actually legal in Australia now, or won't be from October.
Okay. Okay, so 100 milligram cap. Heaps, no higher than 100 milligram. Look, 100 milligram is absolutely heaps, and that's well worth keeping out of reach and using a bit of uncommon sense about it, and keeping them in those childproof containers. Look, if vapers experience any unusual sort of health symptoms from like any imported nicotine vapor product, any tips what they should do? I mean, other than the obvious, go and seek urgent medical advice and attention.
Yeah, look, if there's a concern about the quality or safety of a product, these are now regarded as medicines, and therefore they're regulated by our medicines regulator, the TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, and the appropriate step would be to contact them through their website. They would have a reporting system for products that are causing problems or where there are concerns.
Sure. Look, here's an interesting one which we haven't touched on, because, I mean, we've talked about the liquid nicotine, but we haven't talked about the devices, really. Now, the devices aren't going to be subject to any of these laws that we're talking about today, but what about when the nicotine comes in the devices, or these disposable vapes that seem to be growing in popularity? Where you've got nicotine sealed within a pod, or that type of system there. Will this whole thing affect that? How does that work if devices aren't affected?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're talking about, again, nicotine coming in pre-filled pods, in disposables, in cigar-likes. So these all have nicotine within them, and so they're covered by the same rules. The devices without nicotine are not affected. They can be freely imported, but if your device has nicotine pre-filled, it is covered by these regulations, and you certainly need a prescription.
Right, gotcha. Just made sure that one was clear. Well, now that the TGA has, they basically class nicotine in vaping for, medicinal use, as you've just said. Does that mean vapers can vape anywhere they feel? I mean, think about like any other medicinal product. I mean, you can well within your right to have your necessary pills or asthma puffer or whatever when you go shopping in a supermarket. What, does that mean we can vape in a shopping centre now?
Of course, you're being too logical here, Pippa. They don't work that way. I mean, you're still required to not vape in smoke-free areas, and the state and territory laws generally ban vaping in cars with children under 16. So that hasn't changed, and it won't change for the moment.
So, from what I'm reading between the lines of what you just said, you'd still be subjected to those state laws that where vaping, and correct me if I'm wrong, vaping is covered underneath basically the same umbrella as smoking, as far as needing to smoke a certain distance away from commercial buildings, public parks, and as you say, not being able to smoke while you've got people under 16 in a car and that sort of thing,
Exactly,
Excellent. Well, we've done well to get through. We've got through a hell of a lot of content very fast. We've just got a couple more to go. Guys, thank you for watching this video thus far. We've just got a little bit more important information, and probably the most important part of this short video regarding all this excellent information. Let's get into the next question, shall we? And it's a political question that I took from one of the people out there that asked me to ask this. So here it is. Look, sorry to go, press some political perspectives here on this situation. Look, are politicians so beholding, to lobbyists, that all other information must be ignored? In other words, so there's obviously great information and great science to tell us that vaping is safer than smoking. Why is this kind of happening when it's so obvious?
Yeah, look, it's complicated. Vaping is a political issue, and the decisions are made by Parliament, and it's much less risky to maintain the status quo rather than risk a decision that may involve some political risk. There's a lot of pressure from tobacco control organisations, cancer councils, and medical associations. And they are just making a lot of noise and putting a lot of pressure on the government. And until the vapers step up and make a bit more political noise than the opposition, it's going to be very hard for the government to change. Because politics is about perceptions, and it's about the next election. And for many politicians, I think they feel that they get more kudos by appearing to be tough on tobacco and on protecting the children rather than helping smokers to quit. So it is about perceptions, it's about pressure, it's about political risk. And that really is an important message to vapers, that politicians will listen when there's enough noise and when they get enough lobbying from the vapers.
I'm going to speak on behalf of a lot of vapers that I speak to, and have quite a lot over the last 5+ years. Politicians don't care. I've written to them. They don't care. Look, we've tried all that. They'll never listen to us. Look, what can we do? As an individual or a collection of vapers, seriously, what can we do to make a change? I mean, sure, we saw that 75,000 signing a petition helped slow down these inevitable changes last year, but what can we do now to kind of help improve access where smoking isn't as accessible, more accessible than vaping?
Yeah, look, I think it comes down to two things. I think it's partly political. I think vapers need to make enough noise, let the politicians know this is an important issue that they vote on. So they need to realise that there's more risk in not changing the laws than there is in changing them. I think vapers need to visit their MPs and let them know that this is a serious concern to them. They should tell them their story, educate the MPs. They're not getting the information to really understand how important this is to vapers' health and their lives. So they should visit them, write to them. And that worked in June last year when there was that huge backlash against Greg Hunt's decision to ban vaping imports altogether. It did work. So that kind of pressure can help. But also, I think we need to win the hearts and minds of the public. I mean, there's enormous misinformation in the community, and I think we need to take every opportunity to write to the media, ring talkback radio, write articles, educate your doctor, talk to your friends, and get the public on side, because again, that's going to put political pressure on the government. And the other thing is join a vapor advocacy group. So Australian vapers are very relaxed about this whole situation, and they're just not really engaged. And there is a, as you well know, Pippa, because you're involved with it, there's a new vapor advocacy group starting, and I think they need to support the vapers. And we also need a retail vape industry organisation to lobby. And I really appeal to the industry to get themselves organised and represent their interests and the interests of vapers, and make those known to Parliament.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, and I'll reuse an analogy that I used a couple of years ago. A lot of people might look in the distance on a hill and they'll see a great big anthill. And you've got to sort of think logically for a moment. That anthill has to weather the storm. It has to survive. But not only that, how did the anthill get there and to be able to weather the storm? It wasn't by one little ant helping make that anthill on the hill. It was thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions to be able to help make that wonderful rigid anthill that weathers the storm, survives, and the population keeps on going forevermore.
It's going
So
to take numbers. Yeah.
it's other words, it's going to take some numbers. So look, I guess that's where I'm coming from, and yeah, look, certainly excited that hopefully in coming weeks that we'll be able to release more information about a vaping advocacy group that we can all be proud of, we can all get on board, and we can all collectively make a difference. But look, more importantly right now, it's been fantastic to be able to address these issues, to try and help you some clarity, cut through the jargon, and it's been an absolute honour and privilege once again, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn.
Thank you, Pippa, and thank you for all the great work you do. Keep it up.
Thank you. Look, I just try and do my little bit because I believe that, well, I don't believe, I know, vaping is at least 95% safer than smoking. We all have a right to, live in the moment and be in the moment and to enjoy every moment we possibly have. And not only that, but just for another day so we can spend another day with a loved one. If for nothing else, if you're watching this as a non-vaping supporter or even just as a non-vaper, gaining some extra information, we're just human. We're just normal people like, you and the relatives and your neighbours, and we're just normal Australians just trying to do our best for ourselves and our neighbours and our relatives and our friends next door. So with that said, I hope this has helped in some way. If you need more information, I'm going to have as many links down below. If you'd like to show Dr. Colin Mendelsohn your love and you're grateful for being here, not only support all his good work that he does over at athra.org.au, I believe. Get over there and stay informed. Hit the thumbs up or wherever you're here watching this video. If you've got any questions, don't be shy. Pop them in below. There will be a link also below to my website at pipperslive.com where you can offer further input experiences if you're having any problems getting nicotine. We want to hear from you because it's important to be able to get a hold of a little bit of that information as we advocate moving forward with some real data, so we can make some real difference, hopefully, to those people who can help make a difference to a greater Australia and a greater, healthier one, yeah?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. With that said, thank you once again, Dr. Colin. And thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to stay informed And yeah, wherever you are, stay well, stay safe. Till next time, I'm Pepper Star. This is the wonderful Colin Mendelsohn. You are beautiful. You stay that way. Ciao for now.